Hi, my name is Serena Gulati. I have the privilege and the honor of introducing my professor, Stephen Torres, at tonight's Newton Series lecture. Stephen graduated UC Berkeley, but his intellectual journey continues when he completed his MBA at Cornell University. While in business school, Stephen started his own company, which revolved around creating PV solar reports. This pivoted into a solar customer acquisition platform called Sunible. Stephen is the current CEO of MyDomino. MyDomino's mission and vision is geared towards helping people like you and me transition to 100% clean energy. Stephen is also a lecturer here at UC Berkeley. He teaches Industrial Engineering 171. Technology Firm Leadership is an engaging and interactive class that creates leaders like you and me and gives us the essential tool set, skills, and foundations to help create and develop other leaders. Please help me welcome Stephen Torres.
Thank you, Serena. That was awesome. Really appreciate it. And she is one of the great students who makes IUR 171 one of the best leadership courses ever to be taught in this campus. So thank you so much, Serena. I really have the honor of bringing up our guest. Tom Dinwoodie I've known for a couple years now, introduction from a mutual friend of ours. Tom actually was the founder of the company that I work for. He acquired Sunible and our team. We have some other folks here from that team. Tom is really a legend in our industry, the solar industry. Did his undergrad at Cornell. Has a master's from MIT and a master's in architecture from here at UC Berkeley. He was founder and CEO of Powerlight Corporation, one of the very first commercially focused installation companies. In fact, did the installation for MLK building here. That is a Powerlight system. He merged Powerlight with SunPower Corporation and was head of their systems business and eventually chief technology officer for SunPower. Has, I believe it's around 30 patents in the solar industry in his name. He's also a remarkable spokesperson for climate change. He is a major investor in this sector, with investments ranging from the likes of Mosaic, who is a solar financing company, to Ethical Electric, which is a clean power company on the East Coast. Scoot locally focuses on mobility. Of course, MyDomino, which is a great one as well. But he's also on the board of directors of the Rocky Mountain Institute, on the climate cabinet for the Sierra Club as well. Also as the executive producer of the film, some of you who just were here got to see. Really big advocate for climate change, visionary. I'll never forget one of the first conversations sitting down with Tom. It was me and Denor, and we thought we had a big vision of the future, right? We're like, we want to get 5 million people to do this thing, and Tom's like, well, Stephen, why don't we get 50 million to do this? And I'm like, oh. That's why he's him and I'm me, right? It was just really an amazing situation to be inspired by Tom. So let's bring him up, Mr. Tom Dinwoodie.
Thank you, Stephen.
Uh-huh.
Is this working?
Perfect. Well, welcome back to campus. I
Thank
think
you. Great to be back here.
It's always fun to get back. I know you've been traveling around and get to engage students like this all over the country, so it's always nice. When I sit down with students for office hours, one of the things I like to ask is, tell me your story. I find it's a really great way to find out about people. And it's fun when there's a group of us. So I'm gonna ask you, Tom, tell us your story.
Well, Stephen, I don't like to talk about myself.
I know.
But I'll be happy to go back a bit of my story. So my story started in 8th grade, actually. I've always been kind of a climate guy. I've had this environmental gene, and it's triggered by climate. So I was in 8th grade in Omaha, Nebraska, in middle school, in a science class, and we were studying the solar system, and we were studying the planet Venus, and the assistant science teacher kind of quipped, probably tongue-in-cheek, that we continue to drive our cars, we're going to end up like this, referring to Venus and the greenhouse effect that we were studying at that time. And I kind of turned at that point, and we talked about it a bit, and I took him seriously, but it kind of turned me about 15 degrees from wherever I was headed. And that stuck with me, and it stuck with me through high school, through college, and graduate school, and with my professional career. So, and where that ended, as Stephen said, I went to Cornell undergraduate in environmental engineering, and I went to MIT, where all my graduate work was in photovoltaics, and photovoltaics is really my love. It's just such a wonderful, interesting, simple technology. One to be embraced by the planet, and the resource for it is ubiquitous, of course. So my work in photovoltaics began at graduate school, and then I departed from that and actually had a stint in the wind industry for a number of years right out of graduate school. And the bottom fell out of the wind industry when Mr. Reagan came into office, and I went back to school to architecture here at Berkeley, which I loved, and came out of architecture school and felt, unlike engineering school, which tends to be very theoretical and just not hands-on, I didn't find at Cornell, nor at MIT really. With architecture, you imagine something, you design it, and you build it. And I needed that kind of practical experience once I got out of architecture school to begin to conceive of products, design them, build them, and then implement them. And that's how I first built up my company in the solar industry, because I had the confidence to design something and make it. And that was, I don't know the degree to which kind of makerspace is part of the environment here at UC Berkeley for engineers. I think you're all mostly engineers, but I highly, highly encourage you to become makers if you're not already makers. It's highly confidence building. And so anyway, that's my story. So from that, I started a solar company, Powerlight, as Stephen said, and in 2007 merged that company with SunPower, which manufactures the world's highest efficiency solar cell. And so together we became vertically integrated, because my side of the business was how you take the solar cell and translate it into a product for the customer. And so we basically had commercial, residential, and utility scale customers. And that's that. And I stuck with SunPower for about 5 years after the merger. It kind of got too big for me. I'm much more enamored of companies sort of in the startup phase, and so I'm involved with a lot of companies like that today. Back in the sort of sweet spot.
How did that transition go from working at a large company to the interest with startups? Was there anything in particular that drove that?
Well, probably the most fun I had with my own startup was in the early days, where you're defining product, you're first entering the markets, and you're pivoting left and right in order to make the business work. And it's a very dynamic, very creative phase. And but as you're with a company and it grows, every 50 employees, it becomes a new animal. And once you're past 150, it's kind of a very sluggish animal. And I just yearn for back in the good old days of 50 people. And so that's the sweet spot of companies as far as I'm concerned. And that's why I'm working with a lot of small companies that are in this space.
Great. And so where did the movie producer come from?
Yeah, well, was not in the cards, really. I came up, when I left SunPower, I took a year off just to kind of, I took a sabbatical to kind of chill out and see what emerged. And one of the things I took up during that year off is I started to read the newspapers. I was not media savvy in my busyness in the corporate world, and I was astonished at how wrong the media was getting it, both climate and the energy sector. It was extraordinary to me. I mean, all the news in climate is bad news, and I was having a conversation with Phil Radford, who's the former president of Greenpeace, and he was telling me for every tweet he makes on climate change, he gets 3 retweets, and for every tweet he makes on solutions, he gets 100 retweets. So solutions is far more interesting than the problem. So I felt, I don't know if, for those of you who saw the movie, if it came off as a solutions movie, but that was its intention. It was to portray the problem, but portray in every case what the solution was to this problem. And anyway, it was really an effort to kind of write the story, was the purpose of the movie. So the movie had that as a purpose. It didn't have a purpose to make me a producer of films.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know that it took some time to go through the whole process with the film. What would you say the impact has been so far?
That's very hard to measure. So films aren't what they used to be. People used to go to theaters, but they don't go to theaters so much these days. So the film had its theatrical release in June, and it showed at about 80 theaters around the country, and in some markets it did quite well, and in other markets it had a very scant audience. It's kind of a film for the audience. You know, we live in kind of a country of tribes, or maybe a world of tribes. And if you're part of the tribe that doesn't want to think about climate change, you're not going to go to this film. And so it becomes a film for the choir, but it's also hopefully slightly emboldening to the choir that the solution is out there and we just have to tackle it. So what's its impact? I don't know its impact today. We're just now entering the international markets, and we're in a few weeks entering the educational markets in this country. So it'll be nice to get the film to schools for K through 12 and colleges around the country, and to see what it does.
What would you like it? How would you like it to impact?
I think I would be happy if we just had a more informed citizenry. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of information in the film, and Charles Ferguson did a fairly good job of just laying out what the problem is and what the solution trajectory is in each case, and for people to be informed of that and to know that there are alternatives to the paradigm we've created for ourselves. There's a new paradigm out there that we simply need to embrace. And if people just have that sense, and it's a more hopeful sense, I think hope, it's, you know, I mean, what motivates people to action? It's more hope than fear, I think. And so that's it.
Cool. So one question, I think that's a good transition to just the overall energy and solar energy industry. I'd love your perspective. You obviously have seen the industry emerge, go through ups and downs and sideways. Could you tell us a little bit about your perspective of solar and energy just in general?
Yeah, sure. It's like one way. It's going one way. This industry is one of the fastest growing industries on the planet, if you're talking strictly the solar industry, but the wind industry as well. They're among the fastest growing industries on the planet, and they have their ups and downs every year, but mostly it's up. I mean, solar has been growing on average about 40% year over year for the last 20 years globally. Today it's about 1% of world electricity, which is very small if you're talking, so the numbers are small, but the growth rate is huge, and as you all understand, the exponent, things can become big numbers very quickly. And that's what the solar and wind industry are in the process of doing.
Mm-hmm. What do you see the future in those industries? How do you see that?
So I see solar and wind and other renewables basically disrupting the current energy system probably fully by shortly after mid-century. Yeah, if you play out the numbers, I think that's what it will end up being.
Do you think there are other things on the horizon that could be disruptive?
I don't see it. You know, people talk about, well, what about nuclear? So if I were an investor and looking at an investment in nuclear today, I mean, people talk about second generation nuclear as our savior, that it's going to clean up the problems of the current nuclear system and eliminate the waste problem and address safety issues and whatnot. But the cost will never, you know, if you're looking as an investor into this technology, it's not a technology that's going to be ready for about 20 years. And even if it were ready in 10 years, basically solar and wind are going to be almost too cheap to meter, which was nuclear's claim back when I was in 7th grade, interestingly. So it will never compete with solar and wind. So what role does it have? I think you know, solar and wind are going to become so cheap that they're the cheapest form of power generation today. So right now they're just in the business of creating headroom against more firm power generation technologies, more headroom to accommodate the price of storage, for example. And you know, as far as I'm concerned, the energy markets are disrupted today.
That's cool. So we have some really bright students here. If you could share what insights you have for them, what should they consider? Not sure exactly what years we have, how many freshmen, sophomore, juniors, but I know many of them are, you know, in their, some juniors, seniors. What insights do you have for them as they go out and embark on this world?
Well, I would say you'd better love what you do. And it's better be very important to you because you're going to work really hard to make any kind of success of it. I mean, working hard does not end with undergraduate or graduate work. Industry is a tough place to be, and it's a good thing to love what you do.
And how about for those who are entrepreneurs? Any advice that you have for budding entrepreneurs or?
Yeah, know the numbers.
Know the numbers. I hear that a lot, by the way, know the numbers.
Yeah, I mean, industry is a great place to be because the market is the most powerful engine to move things. And the power, you know, solar and wind have crossed the curves of the cost of conventional power generation, and that's why it's over for conventional. These markets, in my mind, are already disrupted, but they will be disrupted fully in the next 30 to 40 years. And it's only because the numbers are there. They have other features for sure, but it's only because it leads to lower cost energy for everybody.
Great. So I think with that, I'd love to start taking some Q&A from the audience. If anybody has questions that they'd like for any of us. Do we have a mic?
Is that us? Is that a question?
Yeah,
Or just it? And then you pass right in back of you. And again, would you introduce yourselves, just so we know who's asking the question?
Sure. Hi, I'm Alex Newman. I'm a freshman intending to major in electrical engineering and computer science. And I was wondering, I've heard a lot of things on either side about what the best way for individuals to save like help conserve the environment? Some people say that driving an electric car or like a fuel efficient car doesn't save as much as it's purported to be. So what's one or a few things that you'd recommend for the average consumer to do to actually help the environment in a positive way?
Is this to me?
That's you, Tom.
Okay, that's fine. So I would say the simplest, most immediate thing you can do is eat less meat. That has quite a huge impact. Anywhere from, I mean, the beef. You saw some of it in the film if you watched the film, but there's actually a very huge impact there. But it's also an immediate thing that one can do, and which also feeds into one's own health. So that's a very simple thing, but there are more complex things. And being students, you don't own your home, but if you owned a home, basically to transition the home off of fossil fuels, you have options today. You can get 100% clean electricity. You can switch from your natural gas heater in the basement to a heat pump, which is powered by your clean electricity. So you can get all your heating and all your electricity clean today, and you can get your mobility clean with an electric car. But students aren't really in a position to be buying electric cars, so I'm not going to recommend that as the first thing you go out and do. But if you're going to buy a car, definitely go electric. The options are there today, and they span the price range, and we have to be careful about the decisions we're making today with the infrastructure we're buying into. We want to buy into an infrastructure that's going to be fed by clean electricity or clean energy, low-cost clean energy. So what else can I say? So you've got, basically to solve the climate problem, we need to decarbonize the energy system, which we're currently in the process of doing. It's being disrupted. And the other thing that we will need to do, we could decarbonize the energy system today, and we have a carbon removal problem. We're at 400 parts per million today, CO2 in the atmosphere. The last time the planet was at 400 parts per million. And CO2, by the way, lingers for thousands of years in the atmosphere. So the last time we were at 400 parts per million, the oceans were 20-some feet higher, and the climate was quite a bit different around the planet than it is today. So we need to remove carbon, and so how do we do that in our daily lives? I'm kind of getting off on a tangent here, but I'll just go back to what I said before, which is addressing the land use sector is a key way to reduce emissions out of the land use sector and ultimately to sequester carbon out of the atmosphere. And so anything we can do in the land use sector, one of them being eating less meat and raising less beef cattle, is an opportunity. Buying groceries which are organic and from small farms like Full Belly Farms, which you saw in the movie, which is available to anybody around here. These people are putting more carbon into the soils than they're taking out of the soils. So that's part of carbon sequestration, which we all need to participate in. If you have a backyard garden, get your hands on biochar and feed your garden biochar. Biochar is a product of pyrolysis of biomass, and it's a 100% carbon product, and which is an excellent soil amendment for your garden. It helps the garden retain nutrients and water. So that's my 2 cents.
I just want to ask a follow-up question on that. So Stephen said you're investing in a lot of different companies. And so when you talk about going meatless or looking at businesses that build up the soil, do you see do you look, or have you come across companies that have disrupted or created new opportunities based on that need? Is that something that you're interested at all, or just does it create new opportunities in terms of businesses? Because what things that we should be focused on?
Yeah, so it definitely creates new opportunities in terms of businesses. I'm not personally involved with any of the companies that are looking at alternatives to meat, and there are a lot of companies right now down in Silicon Valley who are creating meat in the laboratory instead of on the feedlot. But I'm not involved in that sector. I know nothing about it.
Any thoughts on things that you're seeing, even if you're not involved in it?
No, Stephen actually can speak to that. He's been out there trying these various meats that are coming out of the laboratory. You want to say anything about that, Stephen?
There are a few that have potential. I know Impossible Meats, Impossible Burgers is one. They actually have now several places that serve them in New York and San Francisco. They'll be coming along. But I think to your point, and to Tom's point, is that there's a lot of opportunity out there. And for those of you thinking, what do I want to do when I'm done at school here? I would encourage you to look at opportunities that are going to address these challenges. Because one of the things, if you've taken any of the SCET classes, you find is that the market is a really big key. And the market for some of these opportunities is huge. It's going to be very big. So I would certainly encourage you to look into those opportunities.
So there is a company in West Berkeley, actually. It's called All Power Labs, and they're involved with making carbon negative energy using biomass and putting that through a pyrolysis process, which is basically combustion in the absence of oxygen. And the byproduct is biochar and a syngas, which is fed into a diesel or a generator, power generator. And so they produce electricity and heat. It's a CHP device. And they're starting with a feedstock being biomass. And so it's really starting with photosynthesis, taking CO2 out of the air, putting it into the biomass, and then using the biomass to create the syngas. There are multiple things you can use the syngas for. You can use it to, again, create power, create heat directly, or as a byproduct from a power generator. And also, it's possible to convert the syngas to a synthetic fuel, even jet fuel grade. And it's really a wonderful path for technology. It's a path that's going to have to be embraced as part of the solution to climate change, and All Power Labs is in West Berkeley, really pioneering this work. One of the companies, there are many companies around the country that are doing this.
Hi, so my name is Mark. I'm a graduate student here. So you said when you were looking at your film that the people that went to watch it were the people that already cared about saving energy and saving or stopping climate change. So as you are preparing to release it in Europe, how are you guys marketing it differently? If you were to make a second video, what would you change about the content of the movie so that more people care, basically?
Well, that's really a good question, how you get people sort of to go to a movie or to download a movie and to see it, what generates that interest, and how you invite them into something which isn't normally part of their mindset and vocabulary. I don't have an answer for that. Having done this film, I clearly don't have an answer for that. And I can't tell you how we're marketing it differently internationally. We're going to distributors in different parts of the world who are picking it up for distribution, and I think there's more of an open mind in other parts of the world, so it'll be interesting to compare the take-up in other parts of the world to the American take-up.
But you guys aren't doing anything actively different?
We are about to embark on a social media campaign for the digital release of the film and see what that does. And we, as I said earlier, we are addressing the educational markets right now. We're using a distributor called Roco Educational. They're based over here in Sausalito, and they're tied in with librarians and science teachers around the country for this kind of thing. And so we're trying to push the film out that way, and I think you have a more open-minded audience in young students. And so if we can educate them as to the problem, perhaps there's something about the movie that will spark them and shift their direction in terms of what they want to do.
Do you have any thoughts, just to put you on the spot,
Yeah.
as a student, or any of you all, what you think could be helpful to get the word out, because it's pretty darn important?
Well, personally, from watching the movie, I'd say it's probably pretty terrifying for young students to watch it. So I don't know about like an elementary, like I don't know how low you're going for an elementary school or whatever. Like even for me, it's like pretty depressing just to watch that movie. So I don't know exactly how good of a response you'll get for that. I mean, in general, it seems like you are looking for people that are open-minded already, and maybe you should look towards people that are more, I mean, how do you address people that are closed-minded? I mean, or unaware of the problem? I mean, I don't know, but it seems like you're going to keep targeting the same people that already know.
Yeah. You know, I was not the filmmaker. The filmmaker was Charles Ferguson, who's a very capable filmmaker, and he won an Oscar for prior films, and he chose to do sort of relative ratios of problem versus solution, time-wise, for the film, as he did. If I were making the film, I probably would have emphasized much more of the solution side and got through the problem quickly. Personally, I think it would be a much more kind of, perhaps because you asked earlier, what would you do differently or what would you do next time? I think people are hungry for solution, and so I feel like you can't portray that enough. But there was a lot of discussion at the start of the film. Do you treat this 50-50, 60-40, a third, two-thirds?
I wanted to add, I think one of the interesting things is what you said at the very beginning. I don't even know if you caught it. You said, when I watched this video, and I think this is a really interesting thing because it really is a film. And the way people are consuming things now is through videos, short, sweet, to the point. Mm-hmm. And so when we have a really complex problem like climate change, it's hard to make a film because you have certain elements to a good film. It's like a good story, right? You need to have a beginning, a middle, and end. There needs to be friction. All of those things come into creating a film. When you do it with this particular topic, and in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, you have to make sure that you have all of those elements, and all of those elements are very polarizing. Meaning you have a segment of people that believe it, and you have a segment of people that don't. And so that really, I don't want to say limits your audience, but it's certainly not like a horror genre, or a thriller that is going to be able to attract people that maybe they don't like thrillers, but there was a great actor, so they go and see it. With climate change, it's not Leonardo DiCaprio. He'll have one in the spring, I think. So I think those are really interesting things. He does. That's why I used it. Anyway, great. So let's.
Hi, my name is Amy. I'm a little off on the demographic in this room, and actually, I found this to be an excellent film. Back in the day when I would have been one of the students here, we did hear a lot of very terrifying things. And films like this, documentaries like this, I felt at that time were really made to scare us. And what I saw in this particular film was a great deal of solution, especially from the industry and the economic side. And this has been the piece for as long as I've cared about the environment, that we've been told over and over again that these ideas and making a difference was going to cost too much. So I found it very uplifting to see the news about the cost of the kilowatt hour coming down so dramatically with wind and solar. But it is a terrifying topic. I don't know that finding a way to market it so that it was a little more palatable is really in our best interest. I would have liked to have seen more information on the actual dollars and cents side, but I think overall it was a very strong message, so thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Question back here.
Hi there, my name is Eric. I'm a major in civil engineering and sustainability. Thank you for the movie, first of all. I think it's great that these messages get out there. So what do you see the future of solar? Is it going to be centralized or decentralized?
I think it's going to be a combination, but mostly decentralized. It's a naturally decentralized technology, and I think grid operators are increasingly getting very comfortable with understanding what that means in terms of operating the grid. It's such a natural as a decentralized technology, but it's certainly possible to centralize it.
Right, thank you.
And I think Eric is in the challenge lab who's working on solutions to things like
Yeah,
that. So
that's why I asked, so thank you.
So go talk with the California ISO independent system operators. Get what their view is.
Hi, I am Mariana Villatras from Martin. I'm a graduate student here. I'm trying to create a startup. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Okay. So, first of all, thank you very much for being here. I do believe that the movie industry is a way to get into the culture, and that it is very interesting to have done that, because for some people, it actually gets into them, and you can change and create movements. So, congratulations on it. And I wanted to ask you, what do you think of the natural gas? How do you see the future for the natural gas industry?
Yeah, so that's really a great question, and Charles, when he's at these Q&As, he often gets asked, why don't you deal with fracking? Why don't you deal with a carbon price? Why, you have only so much time for content in a film of this sort, and so he didn't deal with natural gas, other than there are a few shots of natural gas flaring in Africa, I believe. So what do I think of it? I think natural gas is not needed as a bridge fuel, and it's proven itself to be basically as dirty as coal when it comes to global greenhouse gases, with methane emissions at the fracking wells and in pipelines and whatnot. I was told the other day, for example, that the amount of natural gas leaks in the city of Boston exceed the natural gas. Was it a pipeline or a well spill down in Aliso Canyon, is it? In Southern California, which made so much news, national news.
That was a well.
Many months ago, that was a well.
A well that vented, and we lost a year's worth of natural gas.
Right, well. So anyway, we don't, technologically, we don't need natural gas as a bridge fuel, and it kind of sickens me every time I read about that in the papers, where it's viewed as a bridge fuel to the clean energy world. But to answer your question, it's not needed.
Thank you.
I think that's such an interesting point, Tom. One of the things, the whole reason I got into renewables was actually Al Gore's film. Al Gore has a slide at the very end that shows that we have the technology today. That to me was extremely powerful, and looking at that chart, I just think, to Tom's point, is we have the solutions. They're there. It's a matter of being able to implement them and having them be adopted. So, next question.
Hi. My name is Shuang Jiu. My major is mechanical engineering. I want to ask, what's the future of ocean wave energy? Will it become the dominant renewable energy resource in the next 20 to 30 years? Thank you.
So I'm not up to date on ocean wave energy. I know there's some major projects underway and actually implemented today off of Scotland. So I'm quite interested to know myself more about it, but I don't know where it's at, and I don't know what the future of it is. I would say with whether it's conventional or other renewable technologies, it's going to be very hard to compete with solar and wind because right now it's just a race to the bottom with the price of solar and wind. So if the natural cost, I mean, much about wave energy is conventional technology. You have heavy hardware that gets placed in the oceans to harness the forces of the ocean, and you know, so it's not as amenable as, say, a microchip, which is what solar is, to cost reduction, just continuous cost reduction. And so if ocean energy is coming in at 5 to 10 cents a kilowatt hour, say, and it may, well, I'm sure in the early projects it's coming in much higher than that, but if it's asymptote, is it sort of in the 5 to 10 cent range, it'll have a niche market, but it won't be the lowest cost generation source. But I'm all for it. It's a non-carbon energy. I wish it every success.
Hi, thank you for coming to speak. I wanted to ask, you mentioned in your talk that when Ronald Reagan became president, the bottom fell out of the wind industry. So do you see any major regulatory barriers today preventing clean energy from taking place, or any clean energy technologies that are vulnerable to regulation in the future?
Yes, so it's a really good question. So what Reagan did is he didn't really address the regulatory environment. There were tax credits to wind at that time that were out to help wind compete with conventional technologies, which were also subsidized and continue to be subsidized in the world. Missing that support, basically the bottom fell out of the wind industry at that time. Now, but both wind and solar have evolved their cost structure radically since that time, and there's a production tax credit available to wind, a fairly small number, and there's an investment tax credit available to solar, but those industries can survive without those subsidies. But it's a good thing to have them there just to help boost the industry along. But they aren't dependent upon them the way the wind industry was at that time. That was in the mid-1980s. And in terms of regulatory barriers, the primary regulatory barriers to solar anyway is the regulations that are there, part of the public utility commissions around the country, which basically favor centralized power over decentralized power, and don't properly account for the value, the value of generation time-wise. There's not an open, free market in the electricity sector. There have been a number of moves over time, beginning with PURPA back in 1978, which helped to recognize the value of non-traditional generation. But it's never really gotten to the point. There aren't markets today where there's real-time pricing of electricity. If there was, I think you would see this transition accelerate. Mm-hmm.
Great. We probably have time for one more question. Is there anything else?
Actually, non-technical person that I am, I have more of a personal question about your story. As a class, we've heard a lot about people who are bootstrapping to start their companies, or people who are going through different series to get funded by VCs or angel investors. But I think it would be interesting if you would be willing to share how the two of you came together, and what kind of a relationship business-wise that created, and how that and what you all are looking forward to doing. If maybe Stephen, if you don't mind starting, and Tom can interject, but I think that'd be kind of an interesting story for our class to hear.
Yeah, well, we actually were introduced by, I think I mentioned, a mutual friend, Marco. We were working primarily on just solar customer acquisition at the time. We had some other products in the works, and we got together, and it was really awesome. I think there were actually 2 other folks that were interested in possibly working with us. One of whom, actually, Tom was on the board for them when they came to us. But I think at the end of the day, for Dinwoodie and I guess we could tell you that it was a no-brainer. Like, we were like, he knows.
So how did you know at that, it seems like you were at a transition or a pivot point in the business.
Yeah, we were. Well, I don't necessarily, I think we could have kept going down the road. We would have needed investment anyway. But I think what it was for Dinwoodie and I, he was my co-founder at the time, who has since works at a firm called Sunrun. It was, what is the best way for us to get solar out there? How are we going to get more customers? You know, for us, this was really about getting clean energy. We just wanted to have a huge impact. And when it came down to it is, you know, Tom has been very successful. He knows what it takes to build a startup from nothing to a large company, have it acquired. And so for us, it was kind of a no-brainer. It's someone that we could learn from. I mean, I learned more working with Tom in the past 2 years than you can't even imagine. It's just been really wonderful. And I think the other thing was the vision. You know, as I said earlier, it's one thing when you think you're thinking big, and then you talk to someone else who thinks way bigger, and you're like, whoa. You know, that was really, you know, as an entrepreneur, that's what you want. You want to work with someone who's going to challenge you. You want to work with someone who has success and has experience that they can help you and that you can learn from. So I think that was what it was on our end. And Tom's vision of really transitioning the world off of fossil fuels was so much bigger than just how do we get the 20% of people or 30% of people who can go solar, how do we make sure they get solar? You know, what Tom was looking at, getting everyone off fossil fuels, was just so much bigger. It was very inspiring, and you know, for Dinwoodie and I, and Rosanna also, who's sitting here, it was like, yeah, like that was really exciting to be part of.
Tom, what'd you think?
Well, so I would, let's see, feed into that from my side, what I was looking for at the time, it had to do with this film. I had an agreement with Charles Ferguson, the filmmaker, that he'd work on the film and I'd work on something in parallel, so that at the end of the film, there's a way for people to take action in their own lives. So basically, we'd worked out that, you know, the meaningful actions to take were for people to decarbonize and to save money by getting off of fossil fuels in whatever way they're dependent upon fossil fuels in their life. And I was in need of people, the right team, and a platform to do that. And Stephen and Dinwoodie represented that for me, along with Rosanna and their team at the time. They had developed a platform strictly in the solar sector, but I invited them in to take that and to expand it to cover basically alternatives to each one of the ways in which we use fossil fuels in our homes, primarily, homes and businesses. You know, the solution to climate change, it's a ground game. It involves the head of every household and the head of every business making a different choice in how they get their energy. And energy is 2/3 of the problem with climate change. And so this was a platform that was being created to make it easy for homeowners and business owners to decarbonize and to save money in the process. And this was the team to bring into it.
Wondering if that inspired any follow-up questions from you all. One of the things that's so nice about this series, and just to warn you all, is that after we are finished with our more formal part of the presentation, it gives an opportunity for all these extremely shy students to come up and talk to you one-on-one. So I'm hoping that you'll be able to stay for another 15 minutes, and I know we'll have people come up. I thank you both for your inspiration and for your insights, and I look forward to making sure that my family gets off of meat now. So thank you very much. Thanks, students.
Thank you.